First, it was Craig Sullivan. And then a week ago or 2 weeks ago, it was Iqbal Ali. And we've been talking through the prompts in the playbooks in the AI Playbook that's been released by Conversion. And you can still find it on the website there, Convert.com. And we'll put the link in the chat so you can get it there. Now, today, I'm going to pick up where Iqbal left off last week. And I'm going to be pretty brief. I'm going to try and do this in 20 minutes. Unless there are questions, we'll go over that. But Iqbal spoke about problem statements and problem framing. So we went in the first week, and you can find these videos from previous sessions as well on LinkedIn. Craig, we might have to put in the links in here. But we started off with the research process and how GPTs and ChatGPT and LLMs generally can help you to do that research and do the analysis. And Craig spoke us through that text analysis and very robust ways of doing that analysis with the help of LLMs. And so finally, we get to the end of that cycle. And today we're talking mainly about hypotheses and writing hypotheses. And I want to take you through 3 iterations. And the last 2 iterations are kind of still in progress. So in the playbook, you've got, I think, 2 prompts that we wrote and stress tested around hypothesis generation. And you can copy that and you can play with it. And I encourage you to play with it. Don't just inherit it and use it as is, make it your own. And so maybe we'll experiment with some of that today. But what I'm going to show you in this session and take you through is custom GPTs. So that's actually my preferred way of doing this. Custom GPT, I'm sure you know, but just get everyone on the same page there is like a little AI that's very focused. And so instead of using the default, the vanilla ChatGPT that will give you the generic sort of response, this one is honed. And I'll show you what I mean by that. And it started off here with something that I hope you can see called Hypothesis Helper. And in a moment, I'm going to show you what the prompt is behind that and what I've uploaded there. And we've been using this internally, and we've been, based on the feedback, we've been improving it. But then we're now at, I think it's the 2nd or the 3rd iteration of this, and I'll take you through this as well. So this is I call it the hypohero, the second coming, because this is already the 2nd iteration on top. And then, so we'll go through that. And then the initial approach when I built this first hypothesis custom GPT was to try and do everything at once. So this one helps you to write the hypothesis. In fact, it tries to do the writing for you. And then it also reviews the hypothesis. And I realized that actually a better way of doing it is that breaking it down into smaller steps. And so what we've got now is a series of hypotheses helpers, and I'm going to show you 2. So I've got the first one, which is the hypohero, the second coming. So it helps you to write an hypothesis. And then the second one is the hypo helper, the flaw finder. So this checks your hypothesis and helps you make it less bad, I suppose. So we're not going to spend too much time on this one, the first one. I'm going to open up the instructions and just scroll down so you can see what a mouthful this was. And we're not going to go into this, but there's quite a bit here. And I found that the more you stick into it, the worse it is. So let's start with this one. And there are 2. I mean, you don't have to start with any of these responses. You can type in anything here. You can, and we'll test some live ones now, and we'll try to break it, right? So we'll try to catch it out, or rather let it catch us out, which it should do. We'll start with just the simple why write a hypothesis. Okay, and it's giving me a cheeky response, which is great. I like it. I like my AIs to be cheeky. And then let's just start with something. I want to test a button color. Button colors always work on my website. I'm deliberately being vague, deliberately being as fuzzy as possible. And it's doing what I expect it to do, which is to say, well, what is the change that you want to make? And the first thing, and I'll show you under the hood in a moment what happens in the background, but the first thing it's going to try and do is it's going to try and force me to identify the variables. So the independent and dependent variables. What is the thing that I'm changing? And what is the expected outcome of that change? This GPT shouldn't proceed to the next step until I've been able to really clarify that. Okay, so the button color, so I want to make it pink. Pink, it is currently white. And we'll try something a little bit more realistic in a moment, but just to, because what it should do now is it should say to us, well, this really isn't good enough. The way I like to think, and we make the point in the playbook as well, the way I like to think of GPT in this case, but in most cases actually, is as a thought partner, see it as a thought partner. And so I'm not actually expecting it to write something for me. I'm expecting it to help me think better. Good writing is good thinking, and that definitely applies to hypothesis writing. It's all about logic and about thinking through the change that you're making and how you think that theory will play out. So it's got to guide me through that. Right, do you have any user research? I'm glad to see that. And now you start seeing this format coming through. That comes from the hypothesis kit. And this is written by Craig Sullivan, you know very well, and I did the co-author of the book that I've been referring to. So that CustomGPT has got this uploaded in its background, and it's now referring to this. We'll come back to this in a moment. Let's assume we've gone through it. I'm now quickly going to switch to the other the other version. So this is the reviewer, the flaw finder. And I'm going to try and break it again. So I'm going to ask it to help me write a hypothesis, because this one isn't designed to write a hypothesis. So it should say to me, that's not my thing, try something else. Let's see. And there we go, we've broken it. That helps. Okay, so this is at least it's not nonsense, but this is not what it should be doing, and I'm glad it happens because we can fix it live. But while we're here, the reason it's showing you this table is because the way this one has been set up is to take your hypothesis. So let's we believe, take your hypothesis and review it. And it reviews it against this framework by Stefan Tomke. So let's test that. We believe changing the button from pink, other way around, white to pink, will increase revenue. I'm deliberately writing a poor hypothesis to see what it makes of it. Right. So it starts getting to the point, and it's actually being too kind. I like it to be more forceful. But it says, why do you believe that change or that impact will happen? And now it's pushing me to specify data points. So I'm going to say, I just believe it will work. because I read about it on Twitter from a guru. Let's see. Okay, so it's pushing me, it's trying to get me to find some data, something. Now let's go into the background here and see what it's acting on, why it's doing what it's doing. And this is the configuration in the background. So you've got, I'll open the instructions just now. So that's the prompt. But what it's got, in this case, the only knowledge it's got is this thing called the Tomka hypothesis file. And that is, it's just a JSON file that looks like this. Print out Tomka JSON file. It is that table that you saw earlier. Right, so you've seen it already. And here's the actual prompt. And so I'm going to share this with you and really play with it. And as I said earlier, make it your own. I think this is something that works for me, and I'm still fine-tuning it and, you know, keep on getting feedback and keep on improving it. And just in this test already, I've seen something that I want to sharpen it a little bit. But you've got your own way of doing things, and you've got maybe your own frameworks, your own gurus, your own Twitter bros that you like to refer to. So inject that in here and make it your own. It's the process that I want to show you. So the first thing is that separation between two different micro tasks. The one task in this case being writing, or rather thinking through your hypothesis, so making that one, and the other one being reviewing it and splitting that out. So here we go to the step by step. And there are a couple of things that I want to point out here. So the first one is one step at a time. Now, we're already seeing that it isn't doing that. It's kind of overwhelming in its response. You know, it's throwing all of this at me in its response. And actually what I wanted to do is just one thing at a time, ask one question at a time, give me one bit of feedback at a time. And I think the reason it's not doing that is because this prompt is already quite long. But so I've got the first step here, checking that I've identified the variables. Next thing is make sure there's a logical prediction between those variables, so the relationship is spelled out. And so it goes on. And this is why you should make this your own. The reason I've focused on those elements is because in my world, those are the things that I see going wrong almost every day, even from people that have been in the industry for a long time. There are common confusions and misconceptions. And the one is that confusion between the metric and the change. The other one is the confusion between, you know, trying to jump a step or two ahead of yourself. So how do you measure this change? How will you, what is the metric that you will use in order to measure whether this theory of yours is true? Those are the two things that I see people make mistakes with. And then there's this nuanced relationship between the two variables. And that is very confusing. And so both of these GPTs, I have focused a lot on those. It might be that in your organization, in your context, you have other areas that you want to focus on. You have other issues. You've got other frameworks. I'm using Craig's framework. Maybe you've got another one. This is where you should make it your own. At the bottom there is don't overwhelm me. Guide it one step, guide me one step at a time. It ignored me, so I'm going to put it at the top. And now update it. So you're seeing this live. We go back to the hypothesis writer or thinker, and we're going to look at the background there. So now you know what the framework is like, what the structure is like. Here are the different files that I've uploaded. There it starts with the Craig Sullivan Hypothesis Toolkit. So it's this one. Simply downloaded that as a PDF and gave it to the GPT. I should also say that initially, I used to use TXT files, and you can see there's still some remnants of that. I found that PDFs actually work better than the TXT. So I've started recreating those files in PDF format, and for whatever reason, they work better. So we've got that hypothesis toolkit, and we've got 2 further files. And again, this is, you've got to upload what is important to you. Those files, I'm not going to open them up, but just to tell you what the one is a very nuanced explanation of this relationship between the 2 variables. As I've explained, that's really important for me. So we'll look at it quickly, and you'll see this one is much longer than the other one, but it is quite focused in what it's meant to do. Here is something else I want to point out to you that we've not touched on yet. So I give it the format, I give it the template, right? So we can actually change that to template, which is what it should be. And then reference tags, right? So I'm telling it that look for those tags, and where you find those tags, this is the framework that I want you to use. And again, that's coming directly from Craig's piece there. And I'm also, somewhere in this instructions, I'm telling it not to be too strict. Encourage me to use this, but if I want to use a different framework, that's fine, as long as I meet all the other requirements. Okay, so here's the bit about the metric and feedback, where I explain to it the difference between those. So let's test it. And we'll do something a little bit more realistic this time. So I found that first-time users, I'm thinking of a real example here now that I was dealing with just earlier. First-time users don't know how to play the game. So this is maybe I'll give it a little bit more context. I am the product manager for a video game. Let's see what it does. So there's and this is, where you should start making the connection between what Iqbal spoke about in the last session and where we are now. So really the best way to approach this is to start with that. You've gone through that prompt in the book, and you've articulated your problem. You've clearly framed the problem. Once you've done that, it's more than half the work done, and you start by putting that problem in here. I've taken a different approach here, and because I'm trying to be even vaguer than that. So there it's pushing me. What is the specific change you want to make? Maybe a tutorial, right? So first-time users don't know how to play the game. Maybe a tutorial would help. Maybe a tutorial on how to play the game will help first-time users. Yeah, so that is the change. That's one of the variables. And now it's doing the right thing. It says, okay, that's the change. What is the impact? I'm going to try and trick it here. So I'm going to try and jump a few steps ahead, which is what commonly happens at this point. And I'm going to say, I think it will increase revenue. And the reason this is quite weak is because what is that direct link between introducing a tutorial for first-time users and making more money? You know, there's a few steps missing in that chain. Let's see what it does. That's great. That's exactly what it should be doing. So it's not allowing me to make that mistake that in my world I see so commonly made. So it says, remember that the impact should describe a behavioral change. This is from Craig's piece. And again, this is something you can make your own. Increased revenue is a metric that would reflect that impact. So what change in behavior would you expect to see? Okay, let's think about this. Well, maybe they'll just watch the tutorial. I expect first, I'll just call this FTUs, will watch the tutorial and then play the game and have a better experience. Let's see what it does with that, because there's a couple of things in there. But my logic here is, and it's forced me towards that logic. It's kind of nudged me towards that logic. It's taken me away from the jumping the gun a few steps, and it's brought me back to saying, hang on, you're making a change. What is the behavioral impact of that? Let's bring it back to that. Great. Now it's forcing me to be a little bit more specific. And the reason it does that, in the background, the instructions, one of the things at the top of the instructions is you've got to be specific. This has to be, you've got to nail it. You've got to put your finger on it. Yes, that is what I want, all those things. Now, number 3 is still a little bit vague. I wonder if it's going to let me get away with it. But already that's a lot better. So we believe that a tutorial will help FTUs understand the game mechanics better. Yes, that sounds right. Let's see what it does next. Okay. So there's the full population. This is going back to Craig's toolkit. There it is, the full population. That's the kind of thing, it's not going to force you to populate that, but it will encourage you. Now, what specific metrics? Let's try and mess this up. This is the last bit we'll go through. This could be an increase of time spent. Let's see, metrics. I'm going to try and break it again. Metrics, revenue. In fact, it's already told me not to do that. So, but I'm just trying to see how strict it is. So this is exactly what I wanted to do. It's just not letting me get away with that fuzzy, vague, and the lack of definition, the lack of clear, logical, direct link between the variables. It's asking me again about data, and there we go. There's this brings us closer to the metrics. I'm going to leave it there. I'm going to quickly just pop this in to the other, and this is the last exercise I'll do. I'm going to, that's not what I'm going to do. I'm going to take this, copy it, and now that should be good. But let's take it to Floor Finder and see what Floor Finder says. Based on Stefan Tomke's framework. So that's something. Now, this is something I'd want to fix. So this is, I would go into the background. I'm not going to do it live now, but I would go into those instructions and add a line, add a sentence that says, if I have specified my variables, move on to the next step. Because this is erring on the side of caution. It's trying to be strict, which is what I want it to be, but it's being too strict. Okay, so now it takes me through my prediction. I'll spell out my prediction. I think that watching a tutorial will help FTUs understand gameplay better and will therefore reduce the frustration we are seeing. Okay. So you could see that, I mean, in this case, I've already given the other GPT all of this, but it is helpful because it encourages me, it lets me just think it through properly. So what data points do I have? I've got analytics. And that shows drop off for 50 use. And usability testing. That shows FTUs confused. Okay. And it's going to let me get away with this because that's what you want. But if I put some nonsense in there, like my boss told me to, or I'm copying a competitor, it would kick up a fuzz. How will you measure? Actually, I have no idea. Let's try this. What do you propose? I mean, that's pretty good, but I think it can be even easier than that. But again, this has helped me to think it through, because looking at this, I have no idea. How will you measure the impact? And now it's saying completion rates, but actually there's a step before that, which is just measure FTUs watching tutorials. So that's measure percentage of FTUs watching tutorials, because that would give us an indication, right? If nobody clicks on the button, there we go, clicks on the tutorial button. And so this is happening live. This is not something I planned. This is a live session of me, my 5 p.m. version of my brain, thinking through a real life hypothesis that I'm busy working through at the time. And there it's got some metrics. If you're in e-commerce, you won't recognize these things, but D1, D7, D30 retention rates, these are quite common and quite important in apps and games. There we go. Unusual activity. You're going to get little things like that. Just regenerate, and it should behave itself. Vlad, I think I'm going to leave it there. And unless there are questions, I don't know if there are questions and how we get them, and if we can even take questions. But what I'll do is, so we'll wrap it up there. What I'll do is we'll put in the chat or in the conversation on LinkedIn after this, I'll put the links to these two, Hyperhero and Floor Finder, and play with it, give me feedback, help me improve it, because this becomes open source property of the community. But also, last time I'm going to make this point, play with it yourself. Find the prompts, the context, the knowledge, the guidance that's right for you in your organization. Let's have a look. I think there's some. Don't know if there are any questions. If there are no questions, we're going to leave it there.